The vacuum of space held its breath, a silent witness to an impending confrontation that would rewrite the understanding of galactic power dynamics. Captain Jack Thompson stood motionless on the bridge of the UES Prometheus, his reflection ghosting across the quantum adaptive viewscreen that simultaneously displayed multiple potential spatial configurations. Outside, the ship hung like a predatory shadow, its obsidian hull absorbing and redistributing electromagnetic radiation with an almost living intelligence. Conventional sensors would see nothing or everything, depending on the quantum state of observation. It was a technological marvel that defied every known principle of stealth and combat engineering. Lieutenant Sarah Williams, the ship's quantum navigation specialist, worked her control interface with a surgeon's precision. Her fingers danced across holographic displays that seemed to breathe and pulse with an organic rhythm. Each touch sent ripples of computational calculations through the ship's neural network, a system so advanced it blurred the line between technology and consciousness. "Incoming quantum signature," she called out, her voice steady despite the tension crackling through the bridge. Zrelnak's long-range scout approaching Sector 7 Gamma. Captain Thompson's eyes narrowed. The alien reconnaissance vessel was predictable, almost laughably so. Centuries of galactic dominance had made the Zrelnaks complacent, their technological superiority breeding a fatal arrogance. They approached every new system with the same methodical sweep, the same overconfident scanning patterns. But today would be different. The Prometheus had been waiting. Not just waiting, preparing. Every system on the ship was a living, breathing entity of computational potential. The quantum shielding could reconstruct itself faster than an enemy could conceive an attack. The weapon systems existed in a state of perpetual quantum superposition, simultaneously charged and uncharged, targeted and untargeted. "Initiate Shadow Protocol," Thompson commanded, his voice a low, controlled rumble that seemed to resonate with the ship itself. The bridge crew moved with a synchronicity that defied traditional military training. They weren't just operators, they were an integrated system, each member an essential node in a complex, living computational matrix. Michael Rodriguez, the chief systems engineer, didn't just monitor the ship's systems. He communicated with them, reading their potential states like a musician interprets a complex musical score. On the external displays, the Zrelnak Scout began its systematic scanning pattern. Powerful sensor arrays swept through the seemingly empty region of space, probing for any hint of technological presence. They would find nothing, or everything, depending on how the Prometheus chose to be observed. Captain Thompson allowed himself the slightest hint of a smile. The Zrelnaks believed they were the masters of technological surveillance. They had conquered countless civilizations, subdued entire star systems with their advanced scanning and combat technologies. They saw themselves as inevitable, a force of galactic order that could not be challenged. They were about to learn differently. Quantum resonance at 62% and stabilizing, Lieutenant Williams reported. The ship began to shimmer, not with any visible light, but with a quantum distortion that would appear as nothing more than a minor computational artifact of the approaching scout. The Zrelnak's vessel drew closer, its massive sensor arrays sweeping methodically. They were searching for something, anything, that might represent a technological presence. Their scanning techniques had conquered 1,000 worlds, stripped bare the technological secrets of countless civilizations. But humanity was different. Humanity was unexpected. "Prepare quantum displacement," Captain Thompson ordered. The bridge crew didn't acknowledge verbally. They didn't need to. Their neural interfaces were already synchronizing, creating a computational gestalt that was more than the sum of its parts. The Prometheus existed in a state of potential. It could be detected or undetected, present or absent, depending on the precise moment of observation. This was more than stealth. This was a fundamental manipulation of spatial and perceptual reality. As the Zrelnak Scout completed its approach, something extraordinary was about to happen. The first moment of a confrontation that would change everything. The silent predator was about to show its teeth. Deep within the quantum computing core of the UES Prometheus, Lieutenant Rachel Martinez existed in a state of controlled chaos. Her workspace was less a traditional bridge station and more a living, breathing ecosystem of computational potential. Holographic interfaces flickered and danced around her, each display a window into multiple layers of reality that most beings couldn't comprehend. The core itself was unlike any technological system the Zrelnax had ever encountered. It wasn't just a computer, it was a living computational matrix that breathed with an almost organic intelligence. Quantum processors interlinked in patterns that defied traditional computational logic, creating a network so complex it bordered on sentience. Rachel's fingers moved with a musician's grace, each touch sending cascading waves of calculation through the ship's neural network. She wasn't just operating a system. She was communicating with it, interpreting its potential states like a conductor guiding an impossibly complex orchestra. Zrelnax scanning frequency detected, she muttered, her voice barely above a whisper. The holographic displays around her shifted, creating a three-dimensional representation of the alien scout's scanning patterns. But this was no passive display. It was an active battlefield of information, where each quantum state was a potential weapon. The surveillance team of the Zrelnax watched in growing horror. Their most advanced scanning technology was being systematically dismantled by what appeared to be human intuition masquerading as technology. What they saw defied every principle of computational science they understood. Each time the alien scout attempted to penetrate the Prometheus's defensive systems, the ship's quantum core would instantaneously generate millions of potential defensive configurations. It wasn't just adaptation. It was predictive counterintelligence taken to a quantum extreme. The ship was literally creating potential realities faster than the Zrelnax could conceive an attack. Michael Rodriguez, the chief systems engineer, moved between quantum computation nodes like a maestro. His neural interface allowed him to perceive the ship's systems in ways no traditional operator could. He didn't just see data. He saw potential, probability, the very fabric of computational possibility. Quantum resonance stabilizing, he called out, though no one on the bridge needed verbal confirmation. Their neural links were already synchronizing, creating a computational gestalt that transcended individual perception. The Zrelnax had conquered 1,000 worlds with their technological superiority. They had stripped bare the computational secrets of countless civilizations, reducing advanced species to mere data points in their galactic archives. They believed technology was a linear progression, a ladder that they had climbed to the very top. They were about to learn how wrong they were. Rachel's display suddenly erupted with a complex pattern of quantum probabilities. To the Zrelnax observers, it would look like nothing more than a random burst of computational noise. But it was so much more, a mathematical argument that challenged the very foundations of their understanding of technology. The quantum core was creating entire universes of potential defensive strategies. Each microsecond generated millions of computational branches, potential realities where the Prometheus could respond to threats that hadn't even been conceived yet. It was prediction taken to a quantum extreme, a computational precognition that bordered on the mystical. Defensive matrix at maximum quantum potential, Rachel reported, though her words seemed almost unnecessary. The bridge crew moved with a synchronicity that suggested they were more than individual operators. They were nodes in a living, breathing computational organism. Outside the ship, space itself seemed to respond to the Prometheus's quantum fluctuations. The very fabric of reality bent and twisted, creating potential states that would drive traditional sensors to complete confusion. The Zrelnax Scout's most advanced scanning technology was reduced to nothing more than a blunt instrument trying to dissect a living thought. Michael Rodriguez allowed himself the slightest smile. This wasn't just technology. This was a fundamental reimagining of what technology could be. The Prometheus wasn't just a ship. It was a mathematical argument against the possibility of defeat. As the Zrelnax Scout continued its futile scanning attempts, something extraordinary was becoming clear. Humanity had not just developed advanced technology. They had created a living system that could think, predict, and respond in ways that defied every known principle of computational science. The technological nightmare was just beginning. The Zrelnax battle group approached with the confidence of a species that had subjugated countless civilizations. Their standard first contact transmission crackled through space, a ritualistic message of dominance that had broken the spirit of 1,000 worlds. It was a cold, calculated communication that demanded immediate surrender, backed by centuries of uncontested galactic conquest. Captain Jack Thompson listened to the transmission with an expression that was equal parts amusement and calculation. "Open quantum communication channel," he commanded, his voice a low, controlled rumble that seemed to resonate through the ship's neural network. Lieutenant Sarah Williams's fingers danced across her quantum interface. What happened next would redefine the very concept of first contact. The Prometheus didn't just dodge the initial volley. It literally folded space around the incoming projectiles. Quantum entanglement bubbles sprang into existence, creating a mathematical nightmare that would challenge the fundamental understanding of physics. The weapon systems of the Zrelnax found themselves redirected through impossible spatial configurations. Their own destructive potential turned into an intricate dance of computational poetry. On the alien communication screens, the human response was nothing short of miraculous. Instead of a standard defensive maneuver, Captain Thompson was conducting a symphony of spatial manipulation that defied every known principle of combat and physics. The Zrelnax battle group watched in growing horror as their most sophisticated weapons seemed to simply dissolve. Not destroyed, not deflected, simply unmade, transformed into potential states that existed simultaneously everywhere and nowhere. Quantum spatial reconfiguration at 78%, Lieutenant Williams reported, her voice calm despite the extraordinary events unfolding around her. Michael Rodriguez, the chief systems engineer, moved between computational nodes with a grace that suggested he was as much a part of the ship as its quantum processors. To the Zrelnax observers, it looked like he was conducting an impossible orchestra, each movement sending ripples of computational potential through the ship's systems. The standard Zrelnax first contact protocol had never encountered a response like this. Their transmission, a carefully crafted message of subjugation that had worked on countless civilizations, was being systematically dismantled, not through force, but through a fundamental reimagining of spatial reality. Captain Thompson's communication was a masterpiece of mathematical improvisation. The Prometheus began to demonstrate capabilities that shouldn't exist. It wasn't just avoiding attacks, it was playing with them. Weapon trajectories were bent into impossible geometries. Spatial dimensions folded and unfolded like a living mathematical theorem. "Initiate quantum response pattern delta," Thompson ordered, and the ship seemed to shimmer, not with light, but with pure computational potential. The Zrelnax communication officers stared in disbelief. Their most advanced scanning technologies were being turned into nothing more than crude instruments. The human ship was rewriting the very rules of engagement, transforming warfare from a matter of destructive potential to a complex mathematical dialogue. Each moment of the encounter was a lesson in the unexpected. The Prometheus moved with a fluidity that suggested it was more than a ship. It was a living computational entity that could think faster than the concept of thought itself. Lieutenant Rachel Martinez monitored the quantum interactions, her display a complex tapestry of potential realities. To the Zrelnax, it would look like nothing more than a complex pattern of computational noise. But it was a language, a method of communication that transcended traditional understanding. The battle group's commander watched in growing confusion. This wasn't just technological superiority. This was a fundamental challenge to everything they understood about warfare, communication, and the nature of technological intelligence. Captain Thompson's final communication was a masterpiece of understated power. It wasn't a threat. It wasn't a declaration of war. It was a mathematical argument that suggested with absolute certainty that the Zrelnax had fundamentally misunderstood the nature of the universe. Quantum communication complete, Lieutenant Williams reported, a hint of a smile playing across her lips. The Zrelnak's battle group hung in space, their most sophisticated technologies reduced to nothing more than crude instruments of observation. They had approached expecting an easy conquest. Instead, they had encountered something far more terrifying. Humanity had just rewritten the rules of first contact. The full might of the Zrelnak's confederation descended upon the Prometheus like a storm of technological fury. Thousands of ships converged, each vessel a pinnacle of centuries of military engineering. Their weapon systems had stripped bare the defenses of 1,000 civilizations, reduced entire star systems to cosmic dust with mathematical precision. They were about to learn the true meaning of adaptation. Chief Engineer Michael Rodriguez stood at the quantum computational core, his neural interface crackling with potential. This wasn't just a battle. It was a complex, living problem waiting to be solved. Each incoming attack was a mathematical equation, each defensive response a solution that rewrote the very rules of engagement. Incoming wave configuration, he called out, though the bridge crew was already moving. Their synchronicity defied traditional military training. They were less a crew and more a living, breathing computational organism. The first wave of Zrelnak's fighters approached in a perfect geometric formation, a testament to their centuries of refined combat doctrine. Their weapon systems charged, creating intricate energy patterns that had decimated countless civilizations. They expected the standard response: evasion, counterattack, destruction. The Prometheus did something entirely different. As the first energy wave approached, the ship's quantum shielding didn't just deflect. It absorbed, analyzed, and began to predict. Probability fields erupted around the ship, creating potential realities where each incoming attack existed in a state of simultaneous threat and non-threat. To the Zrelnak sensors, it would look like the human ship was simultaneously everywhere and nowhere. Lieutenant Sarah Williams managed the ship's adaptive response with a musician's grace. Her fingers danced across quantum interfaces that seemed to breathe with living intelligence. Each touch sent cascading waves of computational potential through the ship's neural network. Predictive matrix at 92%, she reported, her voice calm despite the extraordinary events unfolding around her. The Zrelnak's battle group watched in growing horror. Their most sophisticated targeting systems were being transformed into nothing more than crude instruments. The Prometheus wasn't just defending, it was learning. Each attack became data, each moment of conflict a lesson in potential combat configurations. Captain Jack Thompson observed the unfolding battle with a calculated calm. This wasn't about destruction. This was about understanding, about transforming warfare from a matter of force to a complex computational dialogue. Weapon systems on the Zrelnak ships began to malfunction in impossible ways. Energy configurations would suddenly redirect. Shield harmonics would collapse without direct intervention. It was as if the very laws of combat had been rewritten. Michael Rodriguez moved between quantum computation nodes like a maestro. He didn't just see data. He saw potential, probability, the living fabric of computational possibility. The ship's defensive systems were creating entire universes of potential responses, faster than the Zrelnaks could conceive an attack. Adaptive Warfare Protocol Delta, Thompson commanded, and the ship seemed to shimmer with pure computational potential. The battle became a living mathematical theorem. Zrelnak's fighters found themselves caught in probability fields where their own attacks became their greatest vulnerability. Weapon trajectories would bend, shield harmonics would collapse, entire squadrons would find themselves trapped in computational loops of their own making. Lieutenant Rachel Martinez monitored the quantum interactions, her display a complex tapestry of potential realities. To the alien observers, it would look like nothing more than a complex pattern of computational noise. But it was a language, a method of combat that transcended traditional understanding. With each passing moment, the Zrelnak's battle group was being systematically dismantled, not through brute force, but through a fundamental reimagining of what combat could be. They weren't facing a ship, they were facing a living, thinking computational entity that could predict, adapt, and transformed faster than the concept of thought itself. The Prometheus wasn't just fighting. It was solving a complex, living problem, with the universe as its computational playground. As the final wave of Zrelnak's fighters approached, something became terrifyingly clear. Humanity had not just developed advanced technology. They had created a system of warfare that was less about destruction and more about understanding, a computational approach that transformed conflict into a complex, living dialogue. The adaptive warfare had only just begun. The Zrelnak's intelligence division spent countless cycles analyzing the intercepted communications from the human vessel. What they discovered was far more terrifying than any advanced weaponry, a glimpse into a cultural and intellectual ecosystem that defied everything they understood about intelligent species. The communications were a complex tapestry of dark humor, scientific precision, and an almost playful approach to the most serious of situations. Technical discussions about quantum computational matrices would be punctuated by references to ancient Earth media, pop culture jokes, and seemingly random personal anecdotes that held deeper computational significance. Captain Jack Thompson's communication log was a prime example. During a critical moment of spatial reconfiguration, he had casually referenced an obscure 21st century comedy routine, using it as a metaphorical framework for explaining a complex quantum navigation technique. To the Zrelnak's analysts, it seemed like madness. To the human crew, it was simply how their minds worked, a multidimensional approach to problem solving that integrated creativity, humor, and rigorous scientific thinking. Lieutenant Sarah Williams demonstrated this perfectly during a tense strategic planning session. While discussing potential defensive configurations against the Zrelnak's assault, she seamlessly integrated a discussion about an old Earth cooking technique into their computational modeling. The method of slowly heating a complex sauce became an analogy for adaptive shield harmonics, with each team member building upon the metaphor until it transformed into a revolutionary defensive strategy. Chief Engineer Michael Rodriguez embodied this approach most comprehensively. His neural interface with the ship's systems wasn't just a technological connection. It was a living, breathing conversation. He didn't just operate the Prometheus. He communicated with it, understanding its potential states through a combination of mathematical precision and creative intuition. The Zrelnak's leadership struggled to comprehend what they were witnessing. These weren't just soldiers or scientists. They were problem solvers who viewed the universe as a complex system waiting to be understood and manipulated. Every challenge was an opportunity, every limitation a puzzle to be reimagined. Intercepted personal communications revealed even more shocking insights. During a moment of extreme tactical stress, the crew's communication channels were filled with jokes, personal stories, and an almost impossible level of mutual support. It wasn't just professional coordination. It was a deep, almost familial connection that transformed their technological system into a living, breathing organism. Lieutenant Rachel Martinez exemplified this approach. While managing complex quantum computational matrices, she would simultaneously engage in a conversation about her grandmother's gardening techniques, using botanical growth patterns as a metaphorical framework for understanding computational expansion. The Zrelnaks began to realize they were facing something far more dangerous than an advanced technological civilization. Humanity represented a fundamental reimagining of intelligence itself, a species that could transform challenges into opportunities with an almost magical fluidity. Their technological systems weren't just tools, they were extensions of human creativity. The Prometheus wasn't just a ship, it was a living testament to human potential. Each system, each computational matrix, was infused with a sense of possibility that transcended traditional understanding. During one particularly revealing communication intercept, the crew discussed a complex tactical challenge while simultaneously sharing a meal, trading personal stories, and solving computational problems. To the Zrelnaks, it appeared chaotic. To humans, it was simply how their minds worked, a multidimensional approach to existence that integrated work, creativity, personal connection, and problem-solving into a seamless whole. Captain Thompson summed it up best in a communication that would be studied by Zrelnak's analysts for generations. "We're not trying to win a war," he said, in a moment of seemingly casual conversation. "We're trying to understand a problem so completely that the problem itself becomes irrelevant." The Zrelnak's leadership realized they were facing a species that didn't just think differently. They existed differently. Humanity wasn't a civilization to be conquered or understood through traditional means. They were a force of nature, a computational and creative ecosystem that could transform challenges into opportunities faster than any known intelligent species could comprehend. The human equation was about to rewrite everything they understood about intelligence, technology, and the very nature of existence. The moment of truth arrived with a silence more profound than any explosion. Captain Jack Thompson stood at the center of the Prometheus's quantum core, a living computational nexus that defied every known principle of technological interaction. Around him, the bridge crew moved with a synchronicity that suggested they were less individual operators and more nodes of a living, breathing computational organism. "Quantum resonance weapon targeting," Lieutenant Sarah Williams announced, her voice a calm counterpoint to the extraordinary events unfolding around them. What Thompson was about to unleash wasn't a weapon in any traditional sense. It was a mathematical argument, a computational theorem that would challenge the very fundamental understanding of conflict and existence. The quantum resonance system was a marvel of human innovation that bordered on the mystical. Developed in the hidden research facilities of Earth's most advanced computational labs, it represented a quantum leap in technological understanding. This wasn't just a method of attack, it was a way of rewriting the very fabric of potential reality. Chief Engineer Michael Rodriguez managed the computational matrix with a musician's precision. His neural interface with the ship's systems created a living dialogue of potential states. Each movement, each computational adjustment, was a note in an impossibly complex symphony of potential realities. "Resonance field stabilizing," he reported, though the bridge crew was already aware. Their neural links had created a computational gestal that transcended individual perception. The Zrelnak's battle group watched in growing horror as the Prometheus began to shimmer, not with light, but with pure computational potential. Space itself seemed to bend and twist around the human vessel, creating potential states that would drive traditional sensors to complete confusion. With a single calculated pulse, Captain Thompson would demonstrate a truth that would reshape galactic understanding. The quantum resonance weapon wasn't about destruction, it was about possibility. With mathematical precision, the Prometheus created a probability field that simultaneously existed in multiple states. The entire Zrelnak's first wave found itself suspended in a computational limbo, existing simultaneously in states of complete functionality and total system failure. Lieutenant Rachel Martinez monitored the quantum interactions, her display a complex tapestry of potential realities. To outside observers, it would look like nothing more than a complex pattern of computational noise. But it was a language, a method of conflict resolution that transcended traditional understanding. "Quantum strike at maximum potential," Williams reported, a hint of scientific excitement in her voice. The Zrelnak ships hung motionless, their most advanced systems caught in an impossible computational loop. They weren't destroyed. They weren't disabled. They existed in a state of pure potential, simultaneously functional and non-functional, a living mathematical theorem that challenged everything they understood about warfare. Captain Thompson's approach was revolutionary. This wasn't about defeating an enemy. It was about solving a complex, living problem with the universe as a computational playground. Each potential state was a solution, each quantum fluctuation a method of communication that went beyond traditional concepts of conflict. Probability matrices holding at 99.7%. Rodriguez called out, his voice a steady counterpoint to the extraordinary events unfolding. The Zrelnak's leadership watched in growing confusion and terror. Their most sophisticated battle groups were being neutralized not through force, but through a fundamental reimagining of what conflict could be. The human vessel had transformed warfare from a matter of destruction to a complex, living dialogue of computational potential. As the quantum resonance field stabilized, something became terrifyingly clear. Humanity had developed a method of conflict resolution that was less about winning and more about understanding. A computational approach that could neutralize entire battle groups without firing a single destructive shot. The strike was more than a weapon. It was a mathematical argument that suggested, with absolute certainty, that the Zrelnaks had fundamentally misunderstood the nature of intelligence, conflict, and existence itself. Quantum communication complete, Lieutenant Williams reported, a subtle smile playing across her lips. The universe held its breath, suspended in a moment of pure computational potential. The diplomatic shuttle approached the Prometheus with a mixture of terror and reluctant curiosity. Zrelnak's diplomatic corps representatives had faced countless first contact scenarios, but nothing could have prepared them for this moment. Their most advanced battle groups hung suspended in quantum stasis, neutralized by a technological marvel they couldn't comprehend. Captain Jack Thompson waited in the primary negotiation chamber, a space that defied traditional military design. The room itself was a living computational environment, its surfaces capable of generating holographic representations, analyzing communication patterns, and providing real-time contextual insights. Lieutenant Sarah Williams managed the communication protocols, her neural interface creating a complex matrix of potential linguistic and cultural translations. This wasn't just about converting words, it was about understanding the fundamental thought processes behind communication. The Zrelnaks delegation entered, their biomechanical suits a testament to centuries of technological advancement. They moved with the precise, calculated grace of a species that had conquered countless civilizations. But today, something was different. Their legendary confidence had been replaced by a mixture of fear and profound curiosity. "We require an explanation," the lead diplomat announced, their translation matrix struggling to capture the nuanced emotional undertones. Captain Thompson's response was unexpected. Instead of a formal military address, he began to discuss an ancient Earth concept, the game of chess. He drew parallels between the quantum resonance event and strategic problem-solving, weaving a narrative that was simultaneously a technical explanation and a profound philosophical discourse. Chief Engineer Michael Rodriguez stood nearby, his presence a living testament to the ship's computational capabilities. The negotiation chamber itself seemed to breathe with potential, holographic displays, dancing with complex mathematical representations that illustrated Thompson's points. The Zrelnaks discovered something far more terrifying than advanced weaponry. The humans weren't interested in conquest. They were interested in understanding. Lieutenant Rachel Martinez provided a detailed breakdown of the quantum resonance event, her presentation a masterpiece of scientific communication. She didn't just explain the technical details, she revealed the philosophical approach that made such technology possible. It was less a weapon demonstration, and more a complex intellectual dialogue about the nature of conflict, potential, and coexistence. The diplomatic team watched in growing amazement. The human approach was nothing like their extensive first contact databases had predicted. These weren't conquerors. They weren't even traditional diplomats. They were problem solvers who viewed every challenge as an opportunity for mutual understanding. "We neutralized your battle groups," Captain Thompson explained, not to demonstrate superiority, but to prevent unnecessary destruction. Each potential state we created was a solution that minimized potential loss of life and resources. The Zrelnaks' leadership began to understand something profound. Humanity's technological superiority wasn't about destruction, it was about understanding. Their most advanced systems were less weapons and more complex problem-solving tools that prioritized minimal conflict resolution. Holographic displays began to show alternative scenarios, potential conflict resolutions that the Prometheus's computational systems had calculated. Each representation was a masterpiece of strategic thinking that prioritized mutual survival over domination. Lieutenant Williams introduced a concept that would reshape the Zrelnaks' understanding of technological intelligence. The quantum resonance event wasn't just a defensive mechanism. It was a form of communication, a way of saying, We can solve this without mutual destruction. The diplomatic chamber became a living classroom. The humans weren't just explaining their technology. They were inviting the Zrelnaks to understand a fundamentally different approach to intelligence, conflict, and coexistence. As the negotiations continued, something extraordinary happened. The Zrelnaks' representatives began to see beyond their traditional understanding of technological superiority. They were witnessing a species that had transformed conflict into a complex, living dialogue of mutual understanding. Captain Thompson's final statement would be recorded in galactic diplomatic archives for generations. "Technology isn't about power," he said. "It's about potential. Our goal isn't to conquer, it's to understand." The universe held its breath, suspended between an old paradigm of conflict and a new possibility of mutual comprehension. The Galactic Confederation chambers erupted in a cacophony of debate that would reshape the understanding of interstellar civilization. Representatives from 1,000 worlds struggled to comprehend the reports streaming in about the human vessel, the UES Prometheus, and its unprecedented first contact with the Zrelnaks. Captain Jack Thompson stood before the Grand Assembly, not as a conqueror, but as a messenger of a fundamentally different approach to galactic coexistence. The holographic displays behind him told a story more complex than any military conquest, a narrative of technological innovation, philosophical insight, and a radical reimagining of intelligent communication. Lieutenant Sarah Williams managed the communication protocols, her neural interface creating a complex matrix of linguistic and cultural translations. This wasn't just a diplomatic presentation. It was a living demonstration of human potential. The Confederation's oldest members watched with a mixture of terror and fascination. The human delegation represented something far more dangerous than any military threat, a complete restructuring of how intelligent species might interact. Chief Engineer Michael Rodriguez presented a series of computational models that demonstrated the Prometheus's approach to problem solving. Each holographic representation was a work of art, complex mathematical theorems that showed how human technology prioritized understanding over conflict. "We're not here to join your confederation," Captain Thompson explained, his voice calm and measured. "We're here to propose a new way of thinking about interstellar relationships." The assembled representatives struggled to comprehend the implications. The human vessel had neutralized an entire Zrelnaks battle group without destroying a single ship. Their technological approach was less about weapons and more about communication, a living, breathing system of mutual understanding. Lieutenant Rachel Martinez demonstrated the quantum resonance technology that had become the centerpiece of galactic discussion. It wasn't a weapon in any traditional sense. It was a method of conflict resolution that transformed potential destruction into a complex dialogue of computational possibilities. The Confederation's membership protocols were being rewritten in real time. Humanity wasn't seeking to be admitted as another member state. They were proposing a fundamental reimagining of interstellar cooperation. Holographic displays showed alternative scenarios, potential conflict resolutions that prioritized mutual survival, technological exchange, and collective understanding. Each representation challenged the Confederation's centuries-old approach to interspecies interaction. "Our technology is an invitation," Captain Thompson continued, "not a threat. We're proposing a galactic ecosystem where technological advancement is measured not by destructive potential, but by problem-solving capabilities." The oldest members of the Confederation recognized something profound. This was more than a technological demonstration. It was a philosophical challenge to everything they understood about intelligent life, conflict, and cooperation. Representatives from species that had been locked in centuries-long conflicts began to see possibilities they had never considered. The human approach wasn't about winning, it was about understanding. Their most advanced systems were living proof of a different approach to intelligence. Michael Rodriguez walked the assembly through the Prometheus's computational matrix, a system so advanced it seemed to breathe with living intelligence. It wasn't just a technological marvel. It was a demonstration of a fundamentally different approach to existence. The Confederation's debate reached a crescendo. Some saw the humans as a threat. Others saw them as the key to a new understanding of galactic potential. But everyone recognized that something fundamental had changed. Lieutenant Williams began to demonstrate the ship's communication systems, a marvel that could translate not just languages, but entire cultural and computational frameworks. It was less a translation matrix and more a living bridge between different forms of intelligence. Captain Thompson's final statement would be recorded in galactic archives for generations. "We're not here to change you," he said. "We're here to invite you to see the universe differently." The holographic displays behind him showed a complex tapestry of potential, alternative ways of understanding conflict, communication, and coexistence. It was an invitation more powerful than any military conquest. As the debate continued, something extraordinary became clear. Humanity wasn't seeking to join the Galactic Confederation. They were proposing to transform it entirely. The universe held its breath, suspended between an old paradigm of conflict and a new possibility of mutual understanding.